I'll speak for about 5 or 10 minutes and then let's have the rest of the meeting for questions and tease out some of the issues that you want to talk about. I've been doing these meetings for the last sort of 2 weeks or so, and they've always been interesting, but it's been a very sort of strange week nationally the last week. You know the sort of phrase good cop, bad cop that you get in the you get in the American TV series. It's been a bit like that. So our friends from UCU, who are normally in charge of negotiations, aren't they, in higher education, saying no need for more talks, we can't have more negotiations, negotiations are at an end. They're probably bad cop, I think, in that sense. And then surprisingly good cop, Universities UK, also somehow involved in these negotiations because they put forward the representatives for the national negotiating body, saying actually we'd be very, very pleased to hear proposals from the UCU with regard to USS. You'd almost think, wouldn't you, they don't quite know what they're doing. I suspect that our past experience, those of you who've been around a while, will tell us they definitely don't know what they're doing. But nonetheless, UCU will be equal to that in responding if the employers are now serious. The employers put something in the FES saying we welcome proposals from UCU. We will put proposals to them in 2 weeks' time to resolve the dispute, and we hope it is they rather than the UCA that win out in terms of the power struggle between the employers. Now enter this picture, if you like, by stage left, an authentic villain with twirly moustache and all the rest of it, the chair of USS even, impartial as ever. It's our fund, of course, but we know which way the board sometimes acts. It acts purely in the interests of the employers. And this week and last week, this guy's been going around the country saying that it's not good enough what we've got so far. What we actually need is to take the union off the board. Take the union off the USS board. Not modern, apparently. Do we need trade unions in the modern world and modern governance structures for pension funds? Do they not get in the way, somehow intrude on us doing proper business? We know, of course, that the real reason why they don't want us on the board is because we make their lives more difficult. Over 2 years of negotiations, we managed to push them back a little. So we now have at least existing staff protected in some way. We managed to protect some part of people's lump sums. We managed to pull them back from wanting to attack fixed term staff. What we haven't got is perfect, we've certainly got something. We managed to at least hold them back on what they wanted to do to introduce massive increases in contributions. They're still big, but we pulled them back a little bit. And so they want really to get on with life in the pension fund without the trade union, without us. And the real reason why they want to do that is because for the employers, or at least the hawks, the bad cops, this is unfinished business. This is unfinished business. How do we know that? It's because when they talk to the press, they describe what they've done to us as modest. They describe it as modest. And how do we know what they want to do? Because they've told us. They've said that they want to get, over time, their contribution to this fund down from 16% to 10%. Don't know if there's anyone in here who's any good at maths, but you don't need to be, I think, the brilliant at it to figure out who's going to be paying the remainder if we're going to keep benefits up. So we know that's what they want to do. And we also know, because they told us, that eventually over time, they want to get everyone in the same inferior fund. They will head them off on that now, but that's something that's going to come back in the next 2 or 3 years. I'll tell you an interesting fact which makes us worry even more about that. Over the next 5 to 10 years, if we let them get away with what they're doing at the moment, those in the new fund, the inferior fund, will slowly begin to outnumber those in the old fund. And at that point, those of us in the old fund, such as me, such as I guess the majority of you, will start to be outnumbered in terms of the politics of this as well. And we will be in real trouble, and we will be under real threat of everyone going into the inferior fund. They've said they want to do it. Believe you me, I think if we let them get away with it, they certainly will do it. So the dispute is about today, of course, and it's also, though, about defending what we have tomorrow, because despite the concessions we've been able to get from them over 2 years of very difficult negotiations, there are still, as you all know, real problems with what the employers are proposing. I'll give you just but two. The employers want to make it cheaper for themselves to make people redundant. That's a real issue in the current climate, and I suspect it's going to be a real issue in universities for some time to come. They want to make it cheaper for themselves to pay out less pension, even though it's only really going to save them about 30 million quid. It's about half a percent of the total of the employer's income in the sector. They still want to do that. They want to make it cheaper for themselves to make people redundant. And of course they want a two-tier system. Now a two-tier system is really, in essence, in the long run, not going to work in this fund. We know their agenda, we know where they want to go. And the third area here for us is the one I talked about at the beginning, the twirly moustache. They want to kick the union out of decision making. They want the union off the premises. I mean, if you like, you might think of them as squatters. It's our fund actually. You set it up in 1975, but nonetheless, they want the union out. So, the union has tried pretty much every trick we can to get them to talk. We've tried ACAS, the TUC, we've tried every other acronym you can think of. You know, we've called indeed for higher powers to come and help us to get the employers to talk, but they won't. Till this week, little crack this week as we opened our dispute, little crack, little glint, little opening of the door. And of course, if they won't talk, and if they won't talk seriously, we have to take action, don't we? We have to take action to defend our pension. That's what we're all here for. We have to do that. And the form that takes, absolutely right, substantial vote for industrial action, is escalating sustained industrial action. Sounds very serious, because I think it actually is for every single person in this room. And because the union understands that as an academic and as an academic related member of staff, the last thing you ever want to do is to impact upon your students or your peers or your research or indeed university. Because we understand that's the last thing you want to do, we start this action small and we work our way upwards. We give the employers every single opportunity, even ones they don't deserve, to come back to the table before real damage is done, before real disruption happens in the sector. That strategy, as I say, we think is beginning to work. We don't just have what UUK have said, we have one or two Vice-Chancellors coming forward and saying to us privately, we're trying to get these talks moving, we're trying to get these talks moving. The sector doesn't need this at the moment, the sector doesn't need this at the moment. Where were they last year, you might say, but better late than never. So we escalate the action and we start by working to contract. Now for me, I travel around the country a lot, I talk to people. Sometimes the only time people see me is when there's bad news. I think this dispute is really interesting because it's the return of the weekend, actually. People writing into us, can't believe the stuff that people are sending into us. Actually getting to see my kids tonight, take my son to the doctor, spend some time with my grandchildren, doing other things, going to the pub, dare I say it, meeting my friends, not, quotes, going the extra mile. And the reason why I'm not going the extra mile is because the employer has stopped going the extra mile for me. And that's happening all over the country. We've been surprised by lots of things that people are doing. Reclaim the lunch hour, I think they're doing at Southampton. They're baking a giant cake in St Andrews today. The employers get the biggest slice of it, the staff get the smallest slice of it. My friends at Imperial College, I was saying to the guys in committee, I've tried in vain for 12 years to persuade my friends at Imperial UCU to get really stuck into action. They're boycotting open days. They're boycotting all sorts of other commemoration days. They're not going the extra mile, and that's happening all over the country. It needs to happen more. You can see, can't you, that the employer, we take action, the employers then begin to think about talking, we take more action, we hope to get them there on the basis of that. So we're escalating slowly, working to contract, as I say, seems to be bringing out an extraordinarily interesting debate about workload for people. People saying, God, I've forgotten what the weekend was like. Someone emailed me this morning and said they hadn't had a weekend off in 3 years. Who gets the benefit of that? The bargain that we made with our employers was they would look after us and look after our pension security in old age. And they've let us down on that bargain, and until they come back to us on that, we don't, in the words of our lawyers, go the extra mile. And we know that universities run on goodwill. You all know that, don't you? Because they run on you. They run on the fact that you will do the extra thing. You will answer your emails in the evening. You will attend the open days, the social evenings, all the other stuff. That's part and parcel of the bargain that we made with our employers that they broke. So that's what we're asking you to do more of that, to get your email up saying I'm working to contract. It may take me a bit longer than normal to answer your message. To make sure that you're not doing things that are voluntary. To make sure that you're not doing things that are outside your contract. To make sure that everybody knows that you support the union. That's the fastest way to get this dispute to end. That's the fastest way to get the employers back to the negotiating table. And that actually is the best way to avoid having to escalate. But let me tell you a little bit about what we will do if we have to escalate. The union's decision is that if working to contract does not bring them back to the table, we hope it does, but if it doesn't, we move towards rolling strike action. Okay, that's what members voted for. That's what we'll move to. We keep people out in certain departments, certain areas. You can decide it. You manage it yourselves, not me. And then we move other people out. We make sure we support people, we collect money for people, and we keep working around rolling strikes in order to disrupt the university. Let's hope we don't have to do that, but if we do, we will make that work in every university covered by USS, right? We will make that work, and that will hurt them. It will hurt us too. We haven't yet devised a form of industrial action that doesn't hurt the people in this room, unfortunately. I mean, you have to make sacrifices, but it will hurt them. If that doesn't bring them back to the negotiating table, we will think about boycotting REF. Members vote for that too. We will think about external examiners boycotts, and we'll think even at some point about what we do around assessment, because that's what members voted for. So I want to be really clear with you about the path we're on. We are trying every single thing we can to reach a just and fair settlement with the employers. Every single thing. Probably waiting longer than some of you would like before we escalate, actually. But we're doing that because we understand that members don't want to take action unnecessarily. That's what we're doing. As I say, we founded USS 1975, people like us. For that, pension chaos. We founded it, it's our fund. We work together. It isn't going to be easy. Anyone who promises you easy victories in the current climate is a fraud and a charlatan. It won't be easy, but together we can defend what we founded 35 years ago. Thank you very much.
Right, thanks.
The difference between working to contract, because speaking personally, my contract is very, very fuzzy.
Yep.
And customary practice.
Yep.
So my contract has the delightful phrase, and while I'm completely and already not answering emails in the evening.
Of contract law. Custom practice by itself doesn't mean that you're required to do anything. It will be taken into account in a tribunal. My advice to you with regard to this situation is that in general, I haven't yet seen an academic contract that I think makes the case for an open day being a normal part of your contract. In that position where you are instructed, you say, I'm not going to do this, I'm working to contract, you make your line manager, and I think this is very important, tell you to do it. You make them explain to you why they want to do it and on what basis they want you to do it. And at that point, we have two options. If we think they're in the wrong, then we think about escalating action. If we think that they are justified, or if the individual member of staff doesn't want to push that, what we then say is, if you want me to do this as a chunk of my time during my normal working week, what is it that you want me not to do in order to do that? Okay, point one. Point two, this question, it's really important. Sorry if I'm boring you, tell me to shut up.
No, not at all.
This question around my hours are very broad, my hours are very flexible. Custom and practice works both ways. What are your typical normal working hours? Not what you choose to do. I know you guys all choose to do lots of things in the evenings and weekends, because that's when you all send me messages, mostly 10 o'clock, after 10 at night. It's the best way to find academic related people at home, actually. But not what you choose to do, what your normal working patterns are, what your contract says, your teaching load if you're an academic, your admin load, your research load, right? And you say to them, what is it you do not want me to do in order to do that? Now that place, lots of these line managers are our members, and the correct response from you as a line manager in that point is you go upstairs yourself and you say, I've got this chap who's saying, he'll come to the open day, but he's saying that's 8 hours out of his time, and it's, what should I do? So we create traffic this way, traffic that way, and we deal with the situation together, whatever the end result is. I'm not arguing that we commit harry-carry, march towards the sound of gunfire. We make a considered decision together. You advise your branch very quickly if you're ending up in a confrontational situation, and we make a decision. We escalate, or we put the onus back on the university to tell you what bits they don't want done, so you can do that. Is that really clear? Okay.
Can I ask about activities action, or but if I don't do it, then I'm sort of hurting my colleagues, if you like.
Understood. The action is designed to inconvenience management rather than you in the first instance, although as I said earlier, I haven't yet devised a form of industrial action that doesn't mean some difficult decisions. I would, in terms of the law, rather than what's ethical, I would need to see where the contract lies, if indeed there is one.
It's not on my contract, it's a voluntary activity.
And I think I would want you to think quite hard about the impact, where the impact will be. I'm probably more interested at the moment in things around when you're marking, for example, you follow the letter of department guidance. When you're asked to do, as this gentleman asked, when you're asked to do something that is extra to, you say, hang on a minute, I want you to tell me what I'm not doing, rather than put yourself and other colleagues in difficulty. There will come a time, I think, when we ask those of you who are external examiners to say, do you know what, this system is not working for us, we've asked for negotiations, they won't give them, pull out. There may come a time when we tell people, for example, that we want them to pull out of editing journals. Some people, I think, will make a decision they want to do that now. The action, I think, allows for that. But if you wanted detailed advice, I think, on whether I can call you out to do that, I would probably need to see the contractual relationship, which I'm happy to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not being asked by my employer to do this.
It's a different... Yeah.
It's an editor of a journal at another institution who some time ago invited me to review an article. I said it would. Now it's arrived, but the action here. So
I think if you are putting your message on, your email message on, if you are following the letter of the union's guidance around your normal workload, your normal working patterns, and if everyone was doing it, I think we'd have pretty effective action. That is my priority at the moment, right? Doesn't mean we won't come and I think really focus on that, but that's my priority at the moment. Okay? Oh yeah. Any more for any more?
I feel that sometimes the goodwill would be owed to someone else. I mean, the editor of the journal, the person who submitted the paper, and then in some ways we wouldn't like to think that articles that we've been submitted were being held up because of that sort of action. So I think it's withdrawal of goodwill to not just our own employer, but to universities more generally.
Yeah,
so I think the
that's
external
right.
examining one, I would say already the situation could be that if you're approached from now on in to do external examining, either PhDs or undergraduate or top postgraduate courses, I think it would be reasonable to say, no, I'm sorry, I can't help with that at the moment.
I think that's right, and I think we've got to be super clear here. I've been coming to see you guys for a long time, and I think one of the things that we sometimes not very good at is telling people that we're involved in this, so the employer thinks actually things are going along all right. I think it's really important that you get those messages up. It's really important that if, for example, you decide you don't want to do external examining because of the dispute, you tell the people at the other end, do you know what, I'm not going to do that. I won't be doing that until things get back to normal. I think that's really important. And the other thing is, there are 50 or so of us in here, is that you go back and talk to 5 or 10 other people and tell them about the message that we're sending out today, because it's their pensions too that we're fighting for, isn't it? Not just yours, it's everyone else. It's even the kids that have come through and begun their careers in the last 4 or 5 years. It's about them too.
Chris, yeah.
Many thanks for coming here.
Pleasure.
An alternative interpretation of what has actually happened. And that is, about half a year ago, changes to our pensions were pushed through. And the union took about half a year for the union to start reacting and putting in some kind of a strategy what to do, because over summer obviously nothing happened. And the union leadership missed the opportunity to immediately take action in industrial strike during the assessment period. And when I attended the meeting on this, the school meeting on this a couple of weeks ago, there was not a single person in the union. And we are talking here about quite long-standing and committed union members. There wasn't a single member there who was actually upbeat as you seem to be in this room. Everyone was disillusioned. Everyone thought that the actual strategy of the union leadership was weak.
Yeah.
No one was clear, actually, precisely that the measures proposed, so working to contract, would make any sense, because apparently you have to work 48 hours a week, and within this, you can do most of our work. So there was a real sense of disillusionment of what was going on.
Okay.
stakes are extremely high. Everyone realizes this, but with this kind of approach you've been proposing, I'm just not quite sure whether we're on the right track.
Well, let's go through that. I am upbeat actually, and the reason I'm upbeat is, I mean, this is, I don't know, I dread to think, probably into a century of different disputes that I've managed and run on behalf of people like you in all sorts of different industries. This is one where I think that there is engagement in the main from members, that members are doing interesting and unusual things, and that rather than having to be nagged by me, they are coming up with their own different ways of saying, do you know what, enough is enough. This general sense of workload as a kind of like, I did that because you were fair, I'm not doing that anymore because you're not being fair. So that's one thing. I understand the concerns around strategy. I think that they need to be put in context. If we are not able to take one single step forward from the current position, what we have is already better than what's happening with the main public sector pension schemes, okay? I think you need to reflect on and understand the difficult situation your negotiators were in nationally, threatened with court, threatened with losing their houses, and still stood up to the employers, negotiated for 2 years, managed to pull the employers back from where we know they want to be, one scheme which is crap, okay, managed to pull the employers back in all sorts of other different ways. What they aren't is members of the magic circle. They weren't able to wave a wand and make everything all right because we are dealing with a nasty group of employers whose attitudes have changed. I'll come to your department if you give me a date, and I'll talk to the people in your department, because I think we can have an in-depth discussion, and as academics and academic related staff we sometimes do, about what happened then, or we can figure out how we're going to deal with it at the moment. The important thing that's happened this week, in my view, is that the employers are beginning to say they like to talk.
Yes.
Right? That doesn't mean that we're going to get anywhere. It doesn't mean I won't be back here in 2 weeks' time telling you we're going to have to escalate, but it does mean that the dynamic is shifting a little bit. The union chose to reballot you because we didn't think we had a sufficient mandate to do this escalating action. Nothing worse than losing strike action. We didn't think we had a sufficient mandate. That's why we came back and asked for you to do it again over the summer. We're grateful for what we've got back, and as I say, the reason I'm upbeat is because the messages I have from around the country are positive. Not unilaterally. I'm having discussions with people who want to carry on doing their research and carry on doing this and carry on working 55 hours a week, and who see that as being important, and I understand that, I get that. That's what working in a university is all about. You don't want to be counting your hours, do you? No one wants to be doing that, but that's where we are.
Can I just add as well? I mean, I understand what you're saying, Chris, and I do think there are a lot of people probably in this room and elsewhere in the university who don't feel we have much power to change anything in relation to pensions. And the dark scenario that Matt has painted for us might well come to fruition. I mean, I don't think that's a reason for not continuing to fight for something better. So, but I do think actually the action itself, for me, has become almost as important as the goal. This feeling that somehow we have been abused by our employers for many, many years now. We have gone the extra mile. And I think, you know, by their actions, they have forfeited that. I mean, I think we are entitled to look much more carefully at how we spend our week. And that doesn't mean necessarily cutting back on research, which for many of us is what brought us into this kind of work in the first place. But
and we are, in many respects, 3/4 of the year away from this. That is, I find, is tragic. So I think we can do all of it, but within the next half a year, we just don't see how we can put real pressure on the employers.
I think it's an interesting debate, and I think you're totally entitled to your opinion, which I think it's valid, and it's what a lot of people are saying. I think that you need to think about what's going on also outside. In that, I think that the employers are moving because of our action. They haven't agreed to proposals because we're not taking action. The action is significant in that sense. I think it's also true to say, isn't it, that you know, in the end, this union moves at the pace of some of its slowest members. For every person who stands up and says what you've said, I've dealt with rooms of people who say to me, last resort, the absolute last resort for me here. is something is impacting on my students directly. And we know, you know those people, I know them, we've all met them, we all know them. And so we have to take people on this journey together, and the way we do that, and the way I've been saying this to other places around the country, we're going to win or lose this dispute in rooms like this around the country, but the way I've been saying it to other groups of members is, we will try everything. We'll actually go a bit further than trying everything to get the employers back into talks, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why we're able to get support, the support we're getting at the moment. You know, I'm not making up. I'm not making up what's coming into my inbox. I get all the criticism and all the crap as much as I get the nice things. I'm getting some of that too, but in general, the response is very positive, and there's really something in this idea of, I think, about reclaiming your own working time and your own working space. I hope we don't go back to normal, actually.
Chris, I do think one thing that's interesting, certainly in the 7 or so. What's interesting about this one is that, going back to that point about custom and practice, this potentially does change custom and practice. It actually switches it more in our favour, in the sense of people then setting down a precedent that they will not go the extra mile until such time as the employer has redressed some of the balance on here. If a whole group of people in a department stop working weekends, custom and practice will be that nothing will be done on the weekends. The employer will have to then change their strategy to get around how that's going to happen, and that may last for a lot longer than this particular action. So I think it's important to see that in a context where the climate at the moment is not going to make things get any easier. It's not suddenly going to be we win this dispute and the employer leaves us alone. It's going to be, were we to win this dispute, the employer will come after something else. There's no doubt about that. So I think it's important to look at the ASOS as being the first step in a wider context, rather than simply just with regard to this dispute.
Any more questions? Any tricky ones? I don't know what to do about this situations? Hello?
I've got a comment and a question. My question's about November the 30th.
Yeah.
You know, what is the position? Are we going to be joined? At least it's going to be the biggest public sector strike in years.
Yeah.
You know, the paperwork says we might go on strike that day. What will influence that? And my comment is really the other comment. I support the action.
Yeah.
What we're fighting for, and I can see the benefits of withdrawing goodwill, because that allows us to negotiate things, but I feel frustrated that this form of action, short of a strike, is not significant enough. I know the logic is start small and estimate, but you said yourself earlier, the reality is look at nasty employers.
Yeah.
And Alan Carr said he should minted here in May to win this dispute is going to be the fight of our lives.
Yep.
This action short of a strike, as it currently is, to me to see not enough, too small or too long. It's basically a matter of feeling that, you know,
okay.
If we're going to escalate it, you know.
Do it now is what you would say. I mean, for me, in the end, Colin, it's an issue for members, but for me, I would say thank you for coming. For me, I would say that the fight of our lives doesn't mean that we put our heads down and charge straight at the enemy. That's the sure way to be defeated. What it does mean is that we think very hard about, as I said earlier, we take as many of our members with us as we can. If I ask for an assessment boycott now, even if it were May or even if it were April or March, I think the reaction I get would be different to if I asked for it after escalating action that members can see. And my job, I think, is to make sure that members understand that. I understand and get the frustrations. What was the question? Remind me of the question. November the 30th. Right, November the 30th, we will be asking USS people to come out on November the 30th, unless, guess what? Your dispute is resolved. All right? But what I can't say is we'll be asking you to come out on November the 30th, because if I do that, that would probably be, rather difficult for me with my learned friends. Okay? Of course we want you to come out on November the 30th, but if the employers on the 27th of October at the next JNC say, do you know what, we've had a think, you're right about this stuff, let's get it sorted, well, of course we wouldn't be able to bring you out.
I think on the assessment, the other issue, I mean, again, going back to Chris, but picking up on Donald's point, I mean, we do have assessment, of course, in January, February. I mean, there's still time to come to some conclusion there as to certainly withholding marks, you know, which creates problems for summer assessment then, I think. So, I mean, I wouldn't, I imagine, rule out escalation by the beginning of the year.
No, I think there's no question if we have to do that, we have to do that. But I think we have an argument to win with what you might call the member who doesn't come to meetings. You know, the person who votes but doesn't come to meetings. We have to win that argument, all of us. You know, and I think that argument is probably best won not by what happened yesterday, but thinking about how we get forward. I think you had a question as well.
Well, yeah, sort of comment as well. If we were to restrict our working hours to something more normal, like 37, I think there would be an impact very quickly.
So do I.
As long as we go 48, it'll take longer. Can we justify the shorter one?
What you should be doing is your normal working patterns based on your workload models in your departments if you have them. I'll give you an example of what that means in a place where you do have them. Newcastle University of Newcastle, you can never work more than 48 and your normal working week and expectation would be 37. Right? Here, slightly different, you have a nominal working week, 36 and a half, 37 and a half?
37.
Like okay. My expectation of the people who manage you would be, and my expectation of you in a work to contract situation would be that you would work within a 37 and a half hour week, but you would never do more than 48. And that's the basis of the union's legal advice. And it comes back to this guy who's, I think, gone now, but what I'm saying is the way to deal with this and to cause them a problem is if you're asked to do additional things is to say, is this voluntary or am I asked to do this? If this is something you want me to do and you think it's normal, what comes out? What comes out the pot? And I think if everybody in this room, never mind everybody in the union did that, we would be in an interesting situation with regard to this action. So that's what my advice would be.
I just wanted to reinforce the point you were making about bringing all of the membership with us. You know, it continually surprises me that we've got hundreds of members and this is the best turnout for a GM we've had in quite a while.
I have that effect on people.
And I think it's important to remember that we are the most keen who turn up to these things, and there's an awful lot of people who are very, very reticent. And you know, like, as you point out, the weight of the action is only going to be felt if you do bring a large volume of people with you.
I think that's right. I think also have responsibility. People who've been around the block a bit, senior academics, senior administrators. I've had an argument online with a professor at the moment at a university that will be nameless, who says that his right to carry on his research and carry on doing all the things he wants to do trumps our collective right to decent pensions. You know, we've met them. But let's be honest, there are some really good people who are heads of department, who are professors, who are senior administrators, who are in our union and care about pensions too. And they can set a real example here, because I'm not saying that, no one's saying that they are in a situation where they can do whatever they want, but they're certainly in a stronger situation than people who've come into the sector in recent years or people who are relatively junior. And those are most of our stronger members. And I think that's some of the things we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks, is saying to heads of departments, saying to the professoriate, what are you doing to help us win this dispute? You set the agenda, you set the example in your departments, and you're really important. I mean, I'm pleased with the reaction so far, but I think we need to do a bit more of that too.
Has the union, just to follow up on that, has the union done anything in relation to REF to try and get members who are panellists to leave?
Well, not yet. I mean, we have a mandate to boycott REF. Most branches are saying to us, not yet. We also, do you have a mock REF here, pretend REF?
Every day.
It's a story. There are kind of lots of we're going to practice REF until we get it right in some of the universities, which we're looking very hard at boycotting. There's something called a teaching review taking place in a few universities as well, which members are boycotting. It's important stuff. You know, the old stuff where you were asked to volunteer. We all know what volunteer means. But you were asked to volunteer and kind of like, you know, it was a bit like it was Alan's turn last year, you'll do it this year, that kind of stuff. And I think that's quite interesting. We're going to look very hard at REF because that's very popular. It's quite difficult to organise a boycott that doesn't hurt you. That's the hard bit. But we will look at it.
I'm very sorry if this is already being done, and I'm just very ignorant.
No.
I just wonder why we can't encourage everybody at the end of every working day to put an out-of-office message on their emails, and particularly heads of departments, if they're on board,
Absolutely.
to say, you know, it's 5 o'clock, I'm sorry I can't, and we do the same on a Friday night. so that message gets back to people. Not that they're just not answering their emails, but they're getting a message back as to why their email's not being answered.
No, I would feel like I think a bad lecturer, teacher, faced with a group of people who are mostly lecturers, if that message hadn't come across today. We've got an out of office you can grab off the website.
Right.
You could have a local one. There's some wonderful ones going on out there. There's one from someone saying, I won't be able to get back to your email immediately because I'm marking my work subject to the highest levels of quality that you would expect from a, so a Russell Group. And I think the more of that, the better. And so by all means, grab that. We're trying ever so hard to get people to do that. If you've got a Facebook page, you can have our working to contract thing as your moniker. Those of you like that new media, there's all sorts of ways you can do it. The best thing you could do would be, go back to your departments and get everyone to put the out of office on. It drives management mad. It's silly stuff, of course, but it drives them balmy. They don't want that, do they? They don't want that. The other thing that's interesting, and before I go, I should say this, everywhere I've been, do you have student feedback deadlines?
Yeah.
Not a Loughborough.
No, we do. No.
Right? So you have to give your feedback within 2 weeks or 21 days or some of that, right?
Yeah.
Look at your department guidelines, look at the institution guidelines for how you mark. Make sure you do it. I'm not saying you don't do your jobs properly, but we all know how things work. Do your jobs properly when it comes to marking and second marking. Yeah. And if you're going to miss the deadline, we tell the manager. That's a problem for them.
Yeah.
We're doing our work properly. Thank you. No, thank you very much for coming. Do you see what I'm saying? I think look at that. Let's look at that stuff, because that I think we can do, and that's the kind of thing that collectively in teams of teaching staff we could do really well. Doing it at Manchester, doing it at Edinburgh. At Manchester, they've got some scheme where they email out the materials, and the staff are boycotting it and saying we think it's pedagogically correct to give them paper. Sorry, so they're all getting brings of paper now, which seems to be causing management uproar for some random reason. No, I think all good.
Okay, well it's coming up to 2 o'clock. Is there one more question, or is everyone ready to go back to that?
Not before 2 o'clock, comrades.
Still lunchtime.
Except you were.
Yeah. Okay, well thanks very much, Matt. I think that's been useful, and I do hope people